fun song. This is, of course, the Beatles. I Saw Her Standing There. 17, as Paul originally called it, as it was kind of in its formative stages. Now, this was the first tune on their first album. Their first real album, not counting what happened in the U.S. But it was released as a single in the U.S. as the flip side of I Want to Hold Your Hand on VJ, I think. Anyway, we're going to take a look at it's a blues-based thing. You really only need 3 chords in the key of E. E7. We'll talk about a bunch of different ways of playing E7s, maybe, and A7. A few different ways of playing that. B7. Yeah. We'll tackle all of those. A little bit of a moving bass thing that happens in there, and cool bass riff. That's pretty much what Paul's doing while he's singing. We'll take a look at George's lead a little bit too, but we'll mostly take a look at the style of the lead. But this was the type of lead that he would never play twice the exact same way, unlike other ones where the leads are very specific, like in All My Lovin'. But this one we're going to talk more just about general lead playing, but what we're really going to focus on is the rhythm guitar part, what John would have been playing, and then some of George's little fills, although you just saw most of them right there, and the cool little riff that happens in the bass. So coming up, oh, now this is interesting. Speaking of the bass part, this is a song that Paul admits to, just borrowing a bass line. There are tons of bass. It's a real typical. There are lots of bass lines. Lots of songs do that. Some do this. So there are a few that are, well, there are lots that are almost generic. And Paul says that he took this one from a Chuck Berry song, Talking About You. It's the same bass riff. And if you have the some of the outtakes from the Let It Be sessions, you'll hear them play Chuck Berry's Talking About You, and using the same bass line as we hear in I Saw Her Standing There. Anyway, coming up, a look at the chords and the arrangement and a few different ways of playing I Saw Her Standing There. We have a blues tune here in the key of E, and so consequently the main chords we're going to see are 1, 4, and 5, E, A, and B. Typically all played as 7th chords, though. We could even play them as power chords, but we could play the E, and we might for the B. I might talk about that a little bit later. Sometimes for the Bs we really just need heavy on the bass. But of course the standard way of playing E7 in first position would be an E chord with the D added up on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Could also be played, and this is really the best way to do it for a straight rhythm guitar part, using a C shape, making it a C7 with the addition of your 4th finger on the B flat, and sliding it up to the 5th fret. A nice strumming pattern to use in this is I'm using the E7 up here at the 5th fret in the C shapes because I want to be able to kill it and have it muted. And a great way to strum this would be to hit a couple of bass notes on the first beat, because we really hear that heavy bass on the beginning on beat 1 and then a hard accent on 2, and kill it right away. Lay your hand down so that all the notes go dead. And then on beat 3, a down and an up. And in the second measure, down and an accent on the and of 2. Let's take a look at the chart and kind of just walk through the parts. The song opens up with an introduction, 4 measures. And if I was just going to play basic rhythm guitar, I would play that E7 chord up at the 5th fret like I discussed in an earlier segment. So we'd open up with 4 measures of E7. Then we'd hit into the verse. And I'd say that right there, when you make that change from E7 in the C shapes to A7 in the E shapes, slow down. Leave your 3rd finger on the E that's on the 5th string. Really important. Help to minimize the amount of, and something you may need to practice that may not be it might not be something that comes very easily. So we've got 2 measures of E7 to to A7 and right back. Then another 2 of E, so the second half of the phrase to B7. Same thing as we're going to the barred B7, use the, keep your third finger on the 5th string. A slightly more complicated and maybe fun way to play through this would be a riff-based rhythm. And that would be where we take the bass part, which I have written out in the first 2 measures of the tablature, and throw in some of George's punctuation every once in a while, like what I have in the 3rd and 4th measures of the tablature. Now George played a lot of his fills were really just this chord. A lot of times he was not doing much at all, just kind of sitting in the background waiting for little spots to open up where he could play something. But what I would do to drive the song a little bit more, especially if I had somebody else playing the rhythm, the chord version, would be to play our E riff and the A riff over most of the E and A chords. And as the intro, that's what I would do, is play the riff first and then sprinkle in George's E7 chord for the 3rd and 4th measures, and then start the song where the verse would be our E riff, 2 measures, to an A, exact same riff, back to E,